While watching this video may not be a matter of life and death, I hope you still enjoy my review of the film with the same name. Hi, my name's Drew and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. I am doing a request film this week. Once again, I did one before. If you have not seen it, you can click a link up here to see my review of The Beach, which is a film a friend of mine suggested to me. Today I am handling another suggestion, this time from my mother. And it's not just from my mother, it's also a film that's rather old. 75 years old, so I had better make sure I don't mess this up. So I am generally speaking very wary of old films, I'll call them, because I feel, as I have mentioned in past reviews, that I don't know enough about cinema. I'm not that much of a cinephile to get it all the time. And I do feel at times that I'm just too much of a modern cinema fan that I might just be bored by, I don't know, a slower film or such that you expect from an older film. I'm happy to say that A Matter of Life and Death is not one of those boring films. It is certainly very interesting. It is a very strange film, but still very good, and we will explore why shortly. But I just wanted to talk about how I feel it's difficult. I'm very interested in seeing films that were made decades and decades ago, really towards the start of the cinema age, but I feel it's quite difficult without a guide. So because obviously there are maybe not as many films as there are nowadays, but a lot of films were also made back then, and without some guidance it could be quite difficult to find appropriate films for you. But again, if you have any suggestions for films from whichever long past decade, please make them and I'll have a look, because I frankly don't know where to start. The history of this film itself seems quite interesting. The idea behind it was that towards the end of the Second World War, the UK and the USA had tensions, I'll call it, or they were starting to grow apart again after obviously fighting together in the war. And this film was conceived as a way to maybe bring both nations together more. Now it is something that is very obvious that you have people from both nations in the film throughout the film. I myself did not see that that was the goal that they were going for. That is something that I learned through my research, but it's still very interesting. When you know it and you go into the film, it kind of makes sense. What is it about? So you have this RAF officer, this captain in his airplane. His name's Peter, and he is unfortunately just about to crash his plane. This is at the very start of the film, so I'm not spoiling anything. This is literally the first few minutes. He is about to crash his plane and he has one last radio interaction with an American radio officer stationed in Britain with the name June. The two have a brief exchange and they immediately fall in love with each other. The twist here being that Peter does not actually die in a crash, although that is what everyone expects and that is what the laws of physics would actually dictate. But he ends up somehow miraculously surviving this plane crash and June actually finds him. The problem with this being that he was actually supposed to die and the conductor, whose job it is to bring him to the other world, was delayed basically. He catches up to Peter and explains to him that actually he can't stay any longer, he has to go with him. And Peter wants to appeal this in front of a court if there is one. And that is actually what the film is about. So at the same time, while Peter is trying to defend himself in front of the higher power, it's never actually exactly said which higher power it is, so we can't just say it. It is heaven, of course, it is implied and you can assume so, but it is never outright said, so it can be whatever you want it to be. So while this is going on, at the same time you have June, and she has a doctor, a friend, who try and figure out what is going on with Peter. They obviously assume that he has some kind of mental illness that is causing hallucinations and they want to help him. That is the basic gist of it. There isn't actually a lot that happens in this film, as in there are not many events or so. That's not what this film is about. It's not a big, long, epic tale or such. I feel it's a very, very quirky exploration of, well, a bit mental illness, of course. They did pay attention to try and sort of scientifically explain what is happening to him, and also at the same time the exploration, of course, of the afterlife and who deserves to live. I know it's a fault of mine, but I automatically assume, because we are used to just the level nowadays, that surely back then acting just was not as good. But then, of course, you have to think about the having been theatre actors for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not like acting is something that was invented towards the end of the 20th century, because there always have been great actors, at least in the cinematic age. And it's the same in this film as well. You have David Niven, who portrays Peter, the main character, and he and Kim Hunter, who portrays June, their relationship is absolutely believable, even although it happens in a split second, basically. It's wonderful watching them on screen, how they navigate this thoroughly strange tale, but their characters feel absolutely genuine, and it's just great to watch. I mean, these are all people that I am not familiar with, typically, because I don't know a lot of films from that era, so these are all very new to me. But it's great to see them, great to discover new actors. Roger Livesey, he plays the doctor, the friend of June who tries to help out. He, in particular, I liked quite a lot in this film. Along with Raymond Massey and Marius Goring, they play the conductor and I'll call it the prosecutor in that trial that I mentioned earlier. So it's very interesting because all of them together, but particularly all the stuff that happens in the other world, it feels a lot like a theatre play. It's all very grandiose, and just how the actors, how they enunciate, and just their bodily positions, how they're standing upright and that, it makes you feel very, very much like you're in a play. It also goes along with the story and how it all plays out, because it does feel like a bit more like a theatre play than an actual film, because the characters themselves are going through all sorts of strange situations and everything is just so matter-of-factly. You've got people who have just died and wake up in this other world, and it's all just business as usual. They're not really disturbed by the fact that they have just died and moved on. Set pieces as well, so you always have this idea of there's not too much camera movement going on, so every set seems to have been designed in a way to have a really nice composition, and to just from the start give you all that you really need, and without, like I say, many camera movements. That is not to say that the camera work is not great in this film. You have particularly a lot of visual things going on that I find very impressive all the time. Transitions in particular, you have one, because one thing I forgot to mention till now is that the film is both in colour, Technicolor to be exact, to be technically exact, and black and white. And you have transitions going on between the two of them, which, as I understand, were very particularly difficult back then. You have one transition that I like really much, and it's from colour into black and white, and it's not just that, but they do this great trick where they're portraying a large group of people that are just entering into the other world. And when you look exact, obviously it's easier for us to spot because we're used to it so much more right now, but I would imagine that back then it must have been mind-blowing. So you can see it's like a see-through pane of glass or something with black dots on it, and it's being moved around slightly to simulate a large group of people moving, and then that seamlessly moves over into an actual group of people, and it's done really, really well, and just visually the whole thing is really, really interesting to look at. I enjoyed it very much. The other world in particular has got a very nice design. It's very sleek, it's very sort of, I'll call it modern, very simplistic, seemed slightly futuristic even, with just very geometrical shapes, smooth surfaces, all these things, but very well thought out. One piece in particular is very well known. It's a moving escalator. That is the connection between this world and the other world. A moving escalator which was so loud that they had to actually redub all the actors and what they're saying in post-production because it wasn't possible to do it on set. But that is a very, very wonderful piece of equipment, and it works so well in the film. And there also they mesh it with backdrops, and it all goes together very seamlessly. Again, thinking of the times and that, no CGI of course, available then. It was a really, really good job. The whole strangeness is something I do want to talk about. It is quite funny. You're not quite sure, even as a viewer, whether this is actually happening or whether it is hallucinations we are talking about. There are various things planted in the film that make it seem so, because one half of it is doctors trying to figure out what exactly is going on in Peter's brain. That is one aspect that I feel, at least my interpretation would be, that it did actually happen, so it's not just all in his mind. Then you've got things like time freezes. That's a thing that I would assume was very new at the time, also done with actors just trying to hold their position very well. In one case you've got a still photo that is being used, but generally speaking, great effects in that way. I've already mentioned how the characters are so matter-of-factly about everything and don't react too harshly to fantastical elements like passing over into another world and such. That's one thing. Then you have the court case, of course, that I have already mentioned, and that in and of itself is very, very theatrical. You have the two opposing counsels, each on one end of this amphitheatre really, and a wonderful backdrop which, to my understanding, was really 100 meters wide, and it feels like it when you see it on the screen. It's like these guys, they have to have a shouting match to even hear each other, and this is where the theatrical acting comes in, because they're both there with the pumped out chests and they're really bellowing, it feels at times. It's also very strange because the two of them, they have this big exchange about Americans and British, which is better, you know. They have quite a long debate about this, and all the time I thought, why are they doing this? It's not really important. They should be talking about the two individuals and why and how they love each other. I mean, what difference does it make who is better of the two countries? But still, it's a very funny exchange, but ultimately it adds to the strangeness. Throw in the judge's majestic wig and you've got a full picture there. But yes, you've got cosmic elements, you've got this other world that is strange. The whole thing feels very, very much like a fantasy film, the whole quality of it. I was fortunate enough to see a Blu-ray of the 4K restoration that they did of the film, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Even at times it feels like a bit of a fantasy film, as if everyone's got this slight glow around them, which really, really helps things. And then you've got vibrant colours, and you have the moving escalator, you have the conductor, who himself is an 18th century French aristocrat. So you've got so many elements in this film thrown together in 1 3/4 hours in an attempt to make US and UK relationships improve. I hope they succeeded. I didn't read too much about what actually happened after this film came out and how it was received, etc. One thing I do know is that for the American audience, they changed the title to Stairway to Heaven, really focusing on this moving stairway, seemingly because the title with the word death in it was, at the time, thought to be too much. I mean, just after the Second World War. So to summarise, this is a very, very fun experience. I would highly recommend it. Very unusual, very strange, but you've got wonderful acting. The cinematography was excellent. Like I say, you've got beautiful transitions. The scenery itself chosen very well. Camera work, very good. Special effects for the time, absolutely marvellous. And the theatrical acting really, really makes this film stand out, because all of the actors do a magnificent job. I was very happy about this recommendation, how it turned out, like I say. Didn't want to disappoint my own mother with this review. Again, I will say, if you do have any recommendations, please share them in the comments down below. If you have seen this film or want to see this film, let me know about that as well. Like I say, I do highly recommend it if you're able to watch it. I saw that it's on YouTube, so you can watch it for free there if you want to, although the quality is not quite as good. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel for more review videos, and I will see you on the next one on Flying Wiener. Take care.